Okay, it's that time. Hello and welcome to another Roofers Coffee Shop RLW. Read, listen, watch. And that's what we're going to do with this live panel coming to you to talk about service and technology. One of my favorite topics. I'm very excited for this. My name is Heidi Ellsworth and I'm the president of Roofers Coffee Shop. And today we are going to talk about how software and service are partnering and how important it is going forward for roofing companies to really be able to embrace technology and all the things that are changing within service and maintenance. So I'd like to get started by introducing our panel. The first person I'd like to introduce is John Kenney, the CEO of Cotney Consulting. John, welcome to the show.
It's great to be here today. Thank you for having me. It's always an absolute pleasure to be on any of these RLWs with the great audience that you always have on them. And it's fantastic today to spend some time with two great guys in the industry, Eugene and Jim. Just let everybody know out there, I know you have to know me by now because I've been around with the dinosaurs and I'm still existing today. So we changed. That's where technology comes in. We went from dinosaur area of the roofing industry and we're all the way up to that modern age. So always happy to be here and looking forward to a great presentation today.
Excellent. Thank you so much, John, our RCS special contributor, for being here again and going over this important topic. Next, I would like to introduce Eugene Zukowski with Jobba. Eugene, can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, good morning, everybody. Again, Heidi, like John, I appreciate coming here. I've done a few of these. I really enjoy it. And I'm really excited to talk about this, especially with John, an industry expert on this. Just quick, I'm with Jobba Trade Technologies. I'm the head of the launch and implementation team. So I'm really excited about this topic. This is something our customers deal with every single day. So I'm very excited and honored to be here.
Excellent. Thank you so much for being here. And finally, but definitely not least, I would like to introduce Jim Rizzo with Jobba. Jim and I have worked together for many, many years. Jim, so excited to have you on the show. Can you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, thanks. This is awesome. Jim Rizzo. And like John, I've been at it 100 years in the roofing industry, it feels like. But yeah, I've been involved with Jobba since the inception and through FCS. So I've got a lot of that experience there, but through the years, distribution, manufacturers reps. So I've been around the industry. I've seen a lot of growth, a lot of changes like John has, and it's been exciting in the last 10 years to be part of the technology growth, which is really exploding, which I think is a lot of fun.
It is. It's amazing. I mean, you got to be on it every single day. So that's why I'm so excited about this RLW today to really dive into it. Before we do dive in, I do want to remind everybody that this is being recorded and that this will be available on demand within 24 hours. So for everyone out there, if you missed it, or share it with other folks in the industry, because this is going to be so important. You can find it on Roofers Coffee Shop under the RLW. Also, we want your questions. So please use the chat or the question function in Zoom and ask. We'll address all the questions at the end of the RLW, but I'll be watching as we go along. So please feel free to make any comments or notes throughout the whole presentation. So gentlemen, let's get going. This is exciting. I want to start out with really talking to John about why should roofing contractors have a service and maintenance program?
Yeah, this is a great topic. Why? So I always like to start, always data. Data will always be your friend, even if you don't like what it has to say. But if the data is kept correctly, it's absolutely on the sticks. So let's talk a little bit about statistics. So in a roofing company, I always like to break it down to, three main areas, right? You either have new construction, re-roof, and service. I mean, you can do multiple systems and you can break it even further, but realistically, in most companies, you do one or all three of those. So where the stats come in is there unequivocally, new construction has the lowest margins for a contractor to do. Now, I'm not talking about whether you should or you shouldn't. I'm just saying statistically, they're the lowest margins. Re-roof has the next highest margins for sure. And if you do service correctly, you're going to double what you're used to seeing in most of the other. There is no doubt about it that service is the most highest profitability division that any roofing contractor And I want to state this, this doesn't necessarily mean you have to be commercial to do this. There's a lot being missed out there on that residential end. There's a lot of money to be made in service, period, doing both high-end residential and also doing commercial. So statistically, absolutely a must. And it is also known as the Great Recession survivor. Service will be done when other things can't be done. So if you have not done a service department, it is absolutely essential that you really delve down in some plans and plan on doing that. Growth of service departments. What I want to touch on here is, if you heard me speak on different things, you know my background from the rooftop, all the way up into management, but I don't really talk a lot about this in service end. So my first really delving into the service department as a moneymaker goes back to my family business in New Jersey about the mid 80s. Up till that point, my grandfather started the company in 22. Naturally, you had leaks, we had snow, people went out, but you really were pulling people off of crews. They were running out, making emergency repairs. You really weren't that interested in it. It was just to keep the customers happy. You moved down. So I get, young man at the time, get in there and start thinking about it. And I'm like, wow, we're missing so much opportunity by not having people dedicated to doing this. So that we basically at that point started a truck, right? So put a truck out there with 2 people in it, running around taking care of it. Then all of a sudden it's like, well, why, we have people that don't want to ready to re-roof and that yet. There's coatings, there's maintenance and all. So really, and I think that's pretty true with our industry, somewhere in the 80s is where roofing contractors started to realize that there was more to this industry than just running out and fixing leaks. Now, I'm not saying there wasn't some pioneers earlier, but that's where it went. Took off more in the 90s. And I think since we hit the 2000 era, it's really become a top-notch thought among it. But service departments have gone from what we call an afterthought to actually a mainstream forethought of how to run your business. So I think that's how we've seen service departments grow over the the last 30 years or so, for sure.
Yeah, John, just real quick, I want to touch on that because I think that's so important, that growth. And starting in the 80s and 90s, that was a lot before there was any technology. I mean, there was a little bit, right? But there wasn't really. I mean, let's be honest. I don't even think I had a computer till the 90s. And so that really has kind of changed that field too.
Yes, we use Polaroid cameras and stapled them to pieces of paper and work orders, took a copy for ourselves and a copy went to the client. So yeah, we've come a long, long way for sure.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious too, and I'd like to shift this over to Jim. We have some future requirements that are coming from property management. I mean, and then when I say future, it's not future. It's been going on for the last probably 10 years where they're really having a lot of technology requirements. What are you seeing? Like when people say why service, I want to say also why service with technology.
Well, yeah, I mean, you're seeing the property managers now. I mean, the products that they used to manage their buildings with in the interior, now in the exterior, and now they want to do the whole building kind of thing. So, the service channels of the world, the Corrigos, the SMS assists are now getting involved in the whole envelope of the building and doing stuff like that. So they're at requiring a lot more data and they want it served in a way to their portals and to their stuff the way they want to see it. So it's really putting a stress on contractors that want to do it. I mean, when I was in a contractor a while back, they showed me a binder that was like 6 inches thick with all their different logins and things that they got to do to get into all these systems. And I think that's putting a stress on trying to, work with these guys and get into their systems.
Yeah. New way of doing things.
Yep.
So I want to keep going on this. I want to kind of touch on that technology, but I also want to, John, come back to you with starting a service department. Like, so there are a number of contractors out there, residential and commercial, that have not started a service department or are wondering how and why.
Yeah. So, tagging back to what Jim had said, which brings us right into here, understand that today's client that you're going to be working for, which fits under your customers, and we'll break it down a little deeper here in a second, they absolutely expect that you can fix their problem. Okay. That is not like they don't look for a roofer that is better at fixing leaks than another one. They expect that. So if you can't fix a leak, then you're probably not going to stand much of a chance of doing it. But that is an expectation that they just, they're assuming that it has to be. What they're looking for is, like Jim had said, the software. They want the data. This is definitely the age of data. Data is going to continue for the next probably 3 or 4 decades to be the leader in this, and it's how they present it, how they get it. So let's go talk a little bit about right customers, because when you're starting a service department, and I'll talk more about the employees, but the right customers, you're going to have some growing pains where you're going to find clients that really do not want to spend money on maintenance. They really are never going to re-roof, and they're going to keep calling you back to fix their leaks, but they're also not going to want to probably pay you. And you walk up on the roof, and your service techs are telling you the roof is shot, and you pass the information, and they don't care because simple. We have triple nets out there, and a lot of times, as long as the person renting the building is paying for this, they keep it going. But that puts you in a really bad position. Where that puts you in a bad position is for the fact that if you are not able to service that roof properly because of the client and customer you're working for, it could affect your reputation. It could also affect the fact of you gaining better clients because you're wasting your resources on. I mean, I know back in the day, I woke up in the morning and hated it when it was raining because the same client that I told needed a re-roof for the last 5 years was going to call me immediately and yell because the leak was still leaking. Well, yeah, the leak was still leaking, but it's 5 foot, keeps moving around 3 foot, 4 foot, 5 foot because the roof shot. So my advice to that, as far as the right customers, is always keep that in mind and use that 80-20 rule. It works very, very well with the, especially on the service clients. Don't waste your time on clients that do not fit your vision and mission of your service department. I know it's always hard to turn someone away, but remember, this is a high profit division. You do not want to be bogged down with, deadheads out there, and there's plenty of them. Go after the right ones. Yeah. So now let's jump a little bit to right employees and culture. What I'd like to state in this area here is, again, you're expected to fix the leak. So, industry standards and safety and everything else, you really want to always have 2 people out working on roof leaks. I know there's people out there that send one. I don't recommend it for a lot of obvious reasons. So what happens is you have a great service tech that can fix a leak, but may be horrible with technology. That's okay. Think about this with the right employees. I can fix their problem, and I have someone else that I can team up with them that can take care of my software issues and deal with the client. Maybe, Joe, the best fix in the roofer is not the one you want to talk to your client. Your other person on the team is. So don't always rule this out. Keep an open mind. Hire and teach. Culture, service culture is different than any other culture in your company. New construction really is a get her done. Client just wants that roof put out. Re-roof does take a little more finesse, but absolutely your culture and service. You got to be well dressed. You got to be well presented, clean, not having hat wearing backwards, hanging stuff off. You got to look like you're presentable. Then your culture in your company needs to take the right culture people and teach that vision and mission, how to go out there and give top-notch customer service, how to talk to the client, and most importantly, when not to talk to the client. Yeah. Because remember, you're going to be working, especially on the larger projects that, facility managers, they have tenants. So you don't know what that lease is. You don't know what they've been told before. You don't want to know. You're there working for your client. You're there to take care of the problem. You check in, you tell them that you're there. Where's the problem? Let them show it to you. When you're done, you check out and say, yes, I've taken care of the problem. Or if it's the truth, you got to come back, let them know that so that you're given the same report. But don't go, they're going to ask you this. What condition is my roof? Say, look, we'll send everything to our client and the client will share with you as B. Keep that in mind, because I can tell you as COO over the years, I got in more issues from clients calling me up that we worked for screaming because our field service tech thought it was going to be a great idea to tell them, you really need a re-roof. Well, that wasn't what they were interested in because the client was in another state. So be careful on that. Yeah. So that's really the main points I want to hit on this, on the right employees, culture, and clients. So that jumping right in the technology next.
Yeah. And really this, as we already have said, this has changed. And so Eugene, I want to go to you just kind of talking about if someone's starting a service department, which technology stack they put together or choose and the processes that have to go with it is super important.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really key when you're starting a service department, or even if you've got one really happening. A lot of times in service, it could be high volume. And all those things that John is telling you to focus on really get blurred because of the volume or the people involved. And it's such a quick process with service. You really need a platform that's going to help you look at that information. John brought up a good point, the right customer. Just because a customer calls you doesn't necessarily mean you want to deal with that customer. But in the beginning, like John said, it's hard to say no to people. But if you have that information and you start kind of looking at your data and you're like, these types of customers are the ones that we're spending our 80% rule on that we shouldn't be, maybe these are the customers I should start avoiding. So having a platform and a system that'll help you organize your data, look at your data, so you can develop your KPIs or your key things to start looking for will really help you build out that service as it keeps growing and as the process is there. And it helps you become more efficient. I mean, even with employees and culture. I mean, in the office, let's say Jim's a fantastic guy, but you look at the data and the data doesn't say that Jim's that great.
Yeah.
So I just like picking on Jim, but that's the kind of thing that we really want to try and help and really recommend that you do, is get a platform that's going to help you build that data, review that data, and then analyze it. My favorite saying is analysis paralysis, because you got so much, you don't know what to do with it.
Exactly. And, when we really look at that, and as we're going through this, I kind of want to, you talked about that evaluation of data. I think that's so important. And this is really about people who already have service departments. So there's a big difference from starting a service department and looking at what you already have. So Eugene, I'll start with you and, kind of how do you evaluate if you're getting the right data?
Yeah, it's really about kind of looking at your performance. Can you honestly answer the question to yourself, I know how well we're performing? So if you can't answer that question, you might not be on the right platform or the right situation. It's being able to access your information, gather the information that matters to you, organizing your customers, your type of customers, what trends are we starting to see? I mean, if you want to, for example, advertising, such a simple, basic thing, but if you can't track where your advertising is working and not working, it's not going to help you find the right customer, for example, because you're missing that key piece of first contact to be able to kind of dig into it and say, nobody wants to fire a customer, but sometimes it's better to avoid when you can. And same thing with employees. If you have a service department already and things are kind of moving along and you're either stuck or you've hit an endpoint, are you able to kind of look into it and see, well, we're running 40, 50 tickets a day, but one crew's doing 3 tickets, one crew's doing 10, whatever the case is. I mean, you really just need to be able to understand what moves your business and look at that information, make sure your platform helps you tell that data story, not hindering your data story.
And so many contractors out there, especially the early adopters, they got a lot of technology, they got a lot of apps, they got a lot of different CRMs. And Jim, you and I've watched this over the years. I mean, we've talked about it so many times. Yeah. So as a contractor, when you're looking at your current technology stack for your service department and the processes and the culture that goes along with that, how do they evaluate where they're at and where they want to be?
Well, I think it takes a good partner. I mean, let's face it. I mean, we come in and we say, what's your tech stack look at? And they go, did I buy one of those? What does that mean? It's like, no, you didn't buy it. What do you have? And we were like kids in a candy store, and I got involved 10 years ago. There was 3 of us, right? Wasn't really hard. We got lost in the show, they stumbled upon us. Today there's 10 aisles at the IRE or 8 aisles of technology. There's so much stuff out there. And then we were like kids in a candy store. Let's buy everything. Well, now that's created data silos. Nothing's talking to itself. Stuff's all, and they can't really get the data out, like Eugene said, to really make it meaningful for the company. How does a CEO now really look at data when it's all over the place? Right. We were out at a customer out west, and The guy was spending a week just taking data out of his systems and putting into a spreadsheet so he could understand where he's at. Now, that's the kind of stuff we're seeing. That's where tech stack is becoming that kind of that word, that phrase everybody's kind of looking at. And we need to make sure those processes are right. So you need a really good partner that kind of weeds through that tech stack and find out how it makes sense, you know.
And, I always recommend too, and this is just overall general, but talk to your employees, right? If you just take the time to talk to them and say, how's this working for you? Oh, well, we're re-entering data 10 times and there's a lot of mistakes there, or we're taking, weeks to get the data out. The employees know, and they want to tell you that things are good or not so good, or it may be good now, but for the growth that you're projecting, it's not going to work. So
double entry's killing them. Double entry.
Yeah.
That's actually a great point, Heidi. I couldn't tell you how many times I'll talk to, when helping a customer implement, I talk to somebody that, they think is just a magician and getting them this information. But then I talk to them and I'm like, you have to do all of this just to get the information. And the CEO or somebody so proud of it, they don't realize that person took them 2 days to gather that for them, because they just want to get the job done. So they do what they have to do. But sometimes really people don't understand the effort that teammates are putting just to get them that information. So that's a really good point.
Yeah. And we have a labor shortage. I mean, not just in the field. We have, the talent within the office. Getting people to come work in roofing is difficult. And if you make it more difficult with the wrong technology or the wrong culture of service, you are really, you're kind of asking for a problem. So one of the things, sorry, I have a little cold, if you all notice. So one of the things that we have been talking about a lot is, and this is happening through RT3, Roofing Technology Think Tank. There is a lot of discussion out there, and not just in RT3, it's industry-wide. But how do we have consistent terminologies? How do we get standardizations just so that someone who has a service department like we talked about, or someone who wants to start a service department, is able to bring in the technology and have everything talk to each other and to the national accounts or to the building owners? So there's a lot going on that way. John, maybe talk a little bit about this, service software and where we have to go in order to really make it work for the contractors.
Sure. So, when you're looking at it from the terminology standpoint, there's always going to, fortunately or unfortunately, depending on the part of the country that you're in, certain products get a nickname. Been through it my entire career. But when you come down to your own company, whether you're working locally, regionally, or nationally, depending on the size of your company, your terminology has to be crystal clear, and it has to be the same throughout all of your techs, offices, branches, whatever it has to be, because you cannot confuse your clients on what the terminology is. So that being said, stick with what is more of an industry norm when you use your technology. I cannot tell you, and I know I'm sure there's some service managers and service superintendents listening in on this now, when they're reviewing some of these, some of the terms that your service techs will use out there and type into these reports is mind-blowing, because it's, you can't even use it. Sometimes we had to spend time figuring out what actually the tech was referring to. So again, set yourself up so that your techs don't have the opportunity to waver. It's just like doing a proposal. Standardization is always best. Consistent, standardized terminologies is always best, so that your client gets the same experience, whether it is someone you're working for in Oregon or somebody you're working for in Maine or Florida or, Midwest. It does not matter. People will understand consistency. That's where your processes really come into play. You have to have consistent processes in your business. And again, that goes back to kind of just before talking about, software and implementation. You have to have training. You have to get your people trained. And it's not just learning how to use the software. You got to train that culture. And again, what you expect out there in your service department. And you have to have that buy-in. So one of the key things in consistent processes is whether the owner buys the software or it comes recommended from your service manager or whoever it is, from the top all the way down to the field, the message has to be the same. We're going to use this because it's better client experience, whatever however you want to sell it. You don't want to ever try to sell this. Well, we're using this because what we did before was horrible, because you're going to have techs out there that really liked what you did before, and they're going to fight you all the way. So that processes and doing it the same, launching it and training all the way from the top down, so everyone knows what to do, so that when someone looks at, I always like to call them SOPs, standard operating procedures. Someone looks at that anywhere during that roadmap of your service processes, they're going to know who's supposed to be doing what, how it's supposed to look, where it comes from, how it gets out of your thing. So those two things are very, very critical. And luckily today with the technology, it's very easy to, set up and have that culture of service within your company with the software today.
Different things. And, I think, and we touched on this a couple times, but I just think it's so important where the national accounts or building owners or homeowners, and we haven't talked about that, but they are sophisticated.
Yeah.
They have their own systems, they're online, they're working in portals. You go to your doctor nowadays, you're going into a portal, right? You just, we're all sophisticated that way. So if you don't teach that sophistication of what is expected from these consumers to your team and don't have that culture of service, it can really cause a lot of problems, right, Eugene?
Yeah, 100%. It's educating the employees is obviously crucial, but we've all been in that situation where we educate them and then they walk out the door and they're doing whatever they want anyways.
Yeah.
So that's really what I think that Jobba really helps everybody do, is set up that consistent my branding, my language, my deficiency language, my estimating, everything is now standardized to company standards. And as long as we teach the process, it's going to come out the same way every single time. Your customers are going to get a consistent experience. John's going to get, one day he might be out of the office, he's not feeling well. Jim could jump in and handle John's normal service crews because the language is the same. The pictures are captured the same way. You can now start to find ways to be more efficient with the employees you have, because like John said, we're not spending 2 hours. I call it roofer dialects. I mean, it depends if you talk to somebody in the South versus the North, what shingles are called, right? But you don't have to worry about that anymore. You've got a consistent language, consistent process, train them on the process, and we'll help you with the consistency.
And having consistency and good communication amongst your team also creates better culture. So it's kind of this big circle that keeps building on itself. So let's talk a little bit about that and the importance of process, because I think that's really where this kind of all comes down in this. So John, I want to start with you because I love this first bullet. So what is so important about process?
Well, if everybody's out there and you listen to the first slide, I told you that service department is the most, statistically the highest profitable department that you can ever implement in your company. But I will also tell you over the years that I've actually seen service departments lose money. Usually how can you lose money in service when you're pricing higher than you normally would, or a lot of it's time and material. It almost seems impossible to lose money in time and material, because you don't have proper processes. So here's some areas where you can lose money, so you understand what I'm talking about, right? If you are not, you don't have a process of how to respond to the leak. If you don't have a process for a callback, how to handle that. Are you sending multiple texts out to fix the same problem, right? And you're not keeping track of all that because all you're worried about is taking the phone call and getting it out. So have those processes. And there again, time and material is great if you're getting that to do a leak, but if you fail to fix it while you're out there and you have to go back 2 and 3, sometimes 4 times on callbacks, I've seen that happen. You usually don't get paid for them because no one's going to. I wouldn't pay in my house if I hired a plumber to fix my water heater and they didn't do it on the first shot. I'm not going to pay them the second and third time. Right. So that's how you can lose money. There's other ways. I know we're going to get into that later, invoicing and all the other important processes, but that is like right up front. Don't lose it. That's the best thing. And the only thing I want to say about your national account requirements, and I'm going to kick it over. As a roofer on national accounts, that could be very, very profitable for you, but it can also be the death nail if you don't do it correctly. And again, national accounts absolutely require processes. It requires you having great processes and you interacting with their processes. So again, that's why you have to have it. So say you're working for 4 different national accounts, they're not necessarily going to even look like they're in the same ballpark on how you do certain things. So you have to make sure that your people know what these requirements are when they go out to that property. And again, I think that's a great lead into the technology stacks and how they meet these requirements tying it in.
Yeah. So Jim, talk about that.
Yeah, well, we just got done with an integration with one of the managed providers, Pagnato, and so we make it very seamless to get the tickets, service tickets through the system. But there are a lot of really good ones out there. What John's saying, there's the national providers out there like NRP and Roof Connect and those kind of benchmark, those kinds of guys that really can help energize your service department by giving you some stuff. But you got to have the technology to help these guys through that system. They're not going to hire you if you just can't get the pictures and generate stuff in a really good way. So I think that we're seeing a lot of that. There's also national account guys like North American, Burns and Scalo, and some of the bigger contractors that are doing these national accounts. And so those are great avenues, but again, it's going to require technology. It's going to require working with them in a way, like John said, in a very consistent manner.
And asking them, right? Talking to, if you do your homework, if you're going to be working for one of these national networks, and it's like we've all said, great work. I actually worked with NRP for a number of years, and but you need to ask the questions. How does this work? It is very much its own culture within your service department. And so having the right technology and going into it kind of eyes open will make it a lot nicer, because it can really not be fun if it's not approached the right way. And one of those big areas that has a lot of huge issues is invoicing. I saw this before, like the expectations on invoicing today is crazy. So John, kind of talk through that and what you've seen.
Well, accuracy in invoices, I know the first question anybody, if I was in the audience, say, well, that's why we have technology. It adds the math up. A lot of times when I speak on estimating, it's the same way. Remember, this is a tool. This is not the person entering the data in. So yes, it will calculate correctly, but it'll calculate what you put in. So usually the biggest problems that I see with accuracy of billing is incorrect photos, matching up what you worked on. Again, this way you have to have processes. You can't expect your invoice to be paid properly if you don't have the right descriptions, the right area of work, the date you actually worked in the job. I know this all sounds very simple, but you can't believe how many invoices get held up, especially when you start to get into your larger, national accounts. You have to have things a certain way. They're going to have the accuracy of what you can bill for. And again, talking about invoicing, when you don't be afraid to invoice. If you're using rags, you're using cleaner, that's all part of service. Make sure that you're charging for those things and list them out on your invoices. Don't hide them. That's what you used. And then I think, going into accountability, this ties in really not only the invoices, but everything we talked about up to this point. Somebody's got to be your accountability, out there cheering this on and holding people accountable to do these right. Because if you find an error and it's not being corrected or dealt with, it's just going to compound and continue. So accuracy, accountability, speed of invoice. I always drives me crazy when I'm working with companies that bill once a month on time and material work. It's like, think of it this way. If I called you out today because my roof's leaking and you fixed it, tomorrow when I get the bill, I'm going to write you that check out or whatever, because I'm very happy. But if I have another leak 4 weeks or 3 weeks down the road, even if it's not the one that you were out on, I'm going to start thinking in my head, what's going on here, right? So get them out. And not only that, let's face it, why else would you want to get your invoices out and paid? Cash is king.
Yeah.
Cash is king. High profit margins, high cash in the bank,
Yep.
Have a surplus. So luckily, today, compared to what we talked about earlier, when I started in it with Polaroids and paperwork and nightmare, we now have the technology as long as you have all these processes in place to make it go. So that's really what I got to add on that section there.
Yeah, and Eugene, really, this is where, excuse me, this is where it all comes together with the technology. I mean, when you're talking about invoicing, that accuracy, speed to invoice, that's a totally different thing than it used to be. It used to be like, oh, we'll just bill them all at the end of the month. Now it needs to be billed that day, that hour almost. How is that working with the technology kind of meeting that need to get this accuracy and speed?
Well, the technology really is what's making it possible. I mean, obviously, the ideal goal is to get that invoice out the door that same day or as quickly as possible. With the technology, we have instant access to all of our job costing in real time. All the photos, pictures, everything that was captured in the field can come right in before the tech has even finished the job. I mean, as soon as it's ready to go, we can review it, approve it. We know the numbers are right. What did they consume in the field? Everything. And we can literally, if we had people sitting around to send an invoice, it's possible with the technology today. But again, it all kind of goes back to process. If we're training the right, taking the right pictures, if we're making sure that they're adding those rags to the ticket, that they consume them, and all the material that was captured, the tools are here to help you get that done, get it paid. The accountability. I mean, anyone could generate an invoice, but not maybe everyone should send it to the customer before it's reviewed.
True.
So we have that. I mean, we can have somebody that's all they do is review the invoices and make sure that they're ready to go before we approve and send them to the customer until people are ready to be on their own. So there's a lot of tools that are built into it. And the idea really is, like John says, the faster you pay that invoice, the faster you get that invoice out the door, the more likely that the customer is going to pay you quickly. Because your one emergency, somebody might send them an invoice for the other 5. The way I'm thinking about it, I want to be the first one there to get paid.
Yes, exactly.
Go ahead. Jump in. If you're doing residential, absolutely get paid while you're on site. Okay.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Technology makes it so simple to do. They sign the invoice. You want to be no different than the HVAC repair guy, the plumber, or anybody else out, carpet cleaner, anybody else that's out there working on that residential. They will pay you on the spot. So make sure you have your electronic payment availability. Get paid while you're there. Don't worry about going back and resending. That's not going to work in residential.
Yeah,
and really,
tool, I'm so sorry. Yeah, the tool, we even have that ability with the properly trained technician. They could generate an invoice right there and take payment right on site.
Yeah.
That I just really want to hit on that for all those who aren't here who maybe are doing both residential and commercial, or just doing residential and want to learn more about service. But John, residential service and maintenance is like a growing opportunity for roofing contractors, right?
It is one of the fastest growing out there for a few reasons. I'm home based in Florida, and we've had recent changes in the insurance laws. Good, bad, or indifferent. They're very hard to understand. But a lot of state areas, I've got clients where a lot of them are actually selling maintenance agreements, train them how to do it to the homeowner, because they got proof back up to the insurance companies that this is not a roof that's been neglected. And it's going to be very hard to be forced to put a new roof on if you can prove that you've been maintaining it and kept it up. And the people pay for it. I mean, I've worked with people in Texas, Colorado, your storm areas, Florida. I've got a few contractors on that. That is a growing field in residential. And that's a great way to get in, start out into the service end.
As we look at that too, it kind of brings it all back to, if you're going to do this, you need to have the technology, right? You need to be able to, you need to be able to document. You need to be able to have the information with the pictures, and then be able to take payment, all those different things for what you're talking about. So let's talk a little bit. And we're just going to say this right out there. There are a lot of programs out there, but today really having Jobba and Cotney together, working together, we're going to talk about that more soon. We wanted to share a little bit of exactly who these companies are. You got a little introduction at the beginning, but we're going to share a little bit more right now. So Jim, I would love for you to kind of start and tell us what is Jobba.
Boy, I get that every day, right?
Yeah.
Every day. So, we've had an out of the box product, FCS, as everybody knows, helped a lot of contractors for a lot of years grow their service department. And it was a great product. But, we created Java on a very unique platform, looking at the future, where this is all going, knowing that all this siloing was going to go on, knowing that everybody was going to buy everything. And with that in mind, we built Java in a platform that allows us to really roll that data up in a way and get it throughout the system in a reporting that allows these contractors to make real-time decisions. And I think that's the most important thing. We have all the bells and whistles that FCS had and more to really service guys in the service world. But it's really the data, rolling it up into Power BI, rolling it up in a system that allows these guys to get dashboards and data in real time to really make decisions, is really what Java is all about. And all the other stuff we have. So that's great. But I think it's all about the data, like Johnny said. That's really where this is going. I've watched it go from features and benefits. Now it's all about the data. How can you get data out of my systems, Jim? How can you put it into a better report for us? Eugene, how do you do that? That's where this is all going in my mind, right?
Yeah. Eugene, a lot of this is happening. Yeah. Talk about where Java is kind of fitting into all this. I mean, the connection with the property managers, the contractors. I mean, there's just so much that has kind of hubbed with Java.
Yeah, absolutely. So Java, again, as Jim was saying a little bit earlier, was we seen what's happening in the future. We kind of seen what's going on in the industry. Everybody bought a lot of tools to do a lot of different things, and we ended up with, I like to say it, hot mess, really. But what Java is really trying to do is we want to help our contractors untangle that mess. So as a platform, from a technology standpoint, we're ready to integrate with those tools that the contractor really needs to run their business. If they truly love their accounting platform, we're there to help them become more efficient by either helping them decide, do we do an export? Do we do a live integration? So Java as a company isn't just the platform and the technology. We really want to work with our contractors to be that partner, helping you make good decisions on what's going to help you grow your business, or maybe a plan to go from, we're here today, how can we get to there in 1 year, 2 years, 3 years? So really as a platform, we have the technology, but as a company, we want to be here to help you grow into that as a partner, as Jim said.
Right. And John, just kind of talk a little bit about that Java Connect, like how they're connecting all the pieces. And then we're going to go on and talk a little bit about what you're doing.
Yeah, so the biggest problem I think most roofing contractors face out there is what we brought up earlier, as far as you have multiple technology in your company and none of them speak to each other. Actually, they don't even record the data the same way.
Right.
And it's almost impossible, as your CEO of your company, or if you're service manager, whatever your job is, without data, you can't properly manage your company. So with the Java Connect, and as both Eugene and Jim were stating, they're working with you to make sure that all this works in conjunction with other softwares that you may be using now, or you may be considering going out and getting on top of that. So I think that's the value of having the team. Like Jim says, they'll do their discussions and talk, and that's why they ask the questions. What else are you using? So they make sure this whole fit comes together, because without that, you basically have islands all over your company, and then somebody's got to figure out how to communicate between the islands. And that is a horrible position to be in any company, because today, everything is instantaneous on information. Your clients demand it, you need it to run your business. You can't wait a day or two anymore. It has to be there when you need it. So you want to make sure that everything connects up and works together.
Yeah, it is so important, and it goes hand in hand with what we're talking about, with everything that Java has been doing, is the training. And so there, John, let's talk a little bit about Cotney Consulting and the need for service process training and what's going on out there. Why should everybody be focusing not just on the technology, but also training for the technology?
Well, I'm when started thinking about how to do this, and people all over the country and other countries have been working on how to train, but a lot of times it's always focused on that front end sale or all, getting in there and how to do certain things, marketing and different problems in your company. But the importance that I really found with service training is it has to get all the way down, which it shouldn't with other training as well, but especially in service, it's got to get to the field, right? You've got your field, you've got your office, you got your customer service, you got your sales team. They all have to jive and be able to understand what information means. I will tell you, regardless of anything you implement in your company, if you do not have total buy-in, and I will state this, you will not, that is where you're going to have to make a decision how you hold people accountable. Because one thing I've learned over the years is there's going to be people that would rather leave your company than to do what you want to do for your vision. So that's why you train first. You get everybody, you got to have the buy-in, you're whiteboarding it out, you're training, you're bringing these together. So we put these ideas all together and said, hey, service is not just how to use the software, right? That's important. You have to learn how to use it. But what do you do with it once you got it? How do you go out and handle your operations in the field? How do you handle your billing process? How do you handle your training and your hiring and your onboarding and your meetings and how much money should I be charging and how much, there's a truck bucket. How much should a truck bring in? What's more important, gross profit and net profit? I know I'm kind of all over there, but I want you to understand that. That's why training is important. So these questions are not asked within your company. Everybody knows what's important and they're moving into a direction. That's why I think training is essential to make service work.
Right.
To get there.
And to really bring that technology in with it.
Exactly. The technology. Look, it's like we talked about, right? It's a tool. If I don't have anyone trained in my company that understands why we're using this tool, not how to use it. You can train people how to go put data in, but if you don't understand the magic that a properly trained person using this software and why you're using it and what the end result is of getting out of this, it doesn't matter what software you have, it will be a disaster. That's why you got to have it in conjunction and they need to work together. Yeah,
that is so true. I mean, you can just see that in here. So let's talk about this partnership. You have a partnership that has you saw this need out there. So Jim, I'm going to start with you. You and the team at Jobba saw this need and you are getting together with John to kind of work through all that.
Yeah, again, for us, it's that consultative type of approach, right? And sitting down and really getting in the weeds with the owners of where they want to go and what they're doing and where they're going with this technology. But like John said, we're just the technology piece. We have an unbelievably great training staff in our company, and they're very passionate about what they do, and we can train. But the piece that we're missing is John's piece, the piece of getting somebody that can really help them through the SOP side of it, through what makes sense in their business, and maybe a little bit of the personnel side of it. That it's hard for us to do that. We're there for a few days or we're with them for a few months. It's hard for us to say, well, this personnel is not working than that person, because we're the software guy. So I think it's important working with guys like John and Greg Hain and people that we work with all over, because we're really about the industry and about the ecosystem, and that we're very tied into the ecosystem. That's very important to our company. We want to be part of it. So it was really great for us to work with John on a real program that I think bringing to our contractors makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So John, tell us about this program. How does this work?
Sure. I'm going to give you the highlights because I could spend a whole other hour going through everything that's in here. And I know we don't have the time, but we broke it into basically 3 sections, right? And the first one is really called that Jobba Service Coach Package, which is you're right up front beginning. We're coming in, we're going to onboard with your team, spend some time understanding whether you're new in service or you're existing and you're getting off the ground or growth. Then we're going to concentrate over 10 hours worth of training programs, operational procedures, service procedures. That's broken into a couple lessons. Then we're going to, you've gotten a lot of information up to that point. Then we're going to do a little review back, make sure that everyone, again, going back to everyone on the team understands their, what what position on the field are they playing, right?
Right.
If everyone understands what position on the field they're playing, then you can start calling plays and actually score, your touchdowns, for lack of a better word, hitting the sports one. But that's what you want. And, and then working in the second half of that first part, service tech procedures, so important.
Yeah.
That you can have all this software and training, but if your service techs aren't trained to do the same thing each and every time, and how best practices, right? That's what we're going to come in and give you is best practices. Administrative procedures, same way. Administratively, you got to understand best practices that work very well in the service industry, and talk about dispatching, and then finally do the final review. So this is packed full of training. So then, what happens after that? Well, you can go what's called a plus package, right? And what that does, it picks up off of this, and we're going to spend time on customer service. We're going to spend time training on customer service, client retention, understanding the cost of attaining a new client, how do you handle irate clients, and so on and so forth. And then department staff management, right? That's where we're really going to work with whoever you want to run your service department, whoever that may be, your managers. How do you hire? How do you do an interview? How do you check references and background checks? Or how do you do a performance review? How do you motivate? And so on and so forth. There's so much more, but to get it, teach you how to manage, because that's lost. A lot of great people get put into a position to lead, but they're never taught how to properly lead. And that's what usually ends up with your failures.
Right.
And then go into financial understanding, right? Here again, you got to look at this. This is a separate company within your company. So not only you as a CEO want to look at this as a division, and you're looking at it, you want to train your service department leaders how to understand their own P&L statement, their break even, their gross, their net, having inventory on trucks, flat rate pricing, maintenance agreements, etc. And then finally, at the end of this section, we're going to get into that marketing and sales procedures. We're going to spend about 3.5, 4 hours worth of training on that, which is, developing a service marketing philosophy and marketing plan. It's different. These are definitely different ways to go to market than anything else you're doing in your company, and teach you how to sell service and maintenance agreements and so on and so forth, right on down to how to enroll people into maintenance plans, right? There's just a lot of information people don't know. And it's okay if you don't know. That's why we're here to do that. And then finally, the third one, we're calling that advanced coach, right? Why I want to call it advanced coach, because this is what I really call, this is the last part of this. And whether you've been doing this a long time, and I've gotten a lot of feedback from clients, that's why we put this in. This is where we're going to teach the gold in the industry. We're going to teach you about job costing. We're going to teach you about time management, collections, safety meetings, all of that. But more importantly, we're going to teach you how to put incentive plans into your service department, how to get all the profit sharing out there, how to get everybody to buy in, how to get all the incentivized so everyone wants to make more money for your company and take care of the clients. So that's really how we broke it down. I think I kept it within a reasonable range.
You did good. You did good. And I want to kind of just finalize that with Eugene. All of this is available and can happen. All this stuff that John is going to be coaching and teaching, because you're going to be able to pull the metrics, right?
Yeah, so exactly the metrics. So we're going to be able to show the data in a way that when you're working with John, you guys can evaluate what's happening and measure against those key components that John is working with you to help build up your service department. So it's a great way that Jabba's ready to do that. In addition to that, and I always love bragging about my team, so I'm going to very quickly. The nice thing is when you call in and you talk to somebody and you say, I'm working with John, they know what that is. Your trainer's going to know that, you're working on it with the Cotney program. I know how to train you to do what John is expecting you to do. So our staff is ready to help you. The platform is ready to help you. And then to, again, work within the confines of what you are working with John to achieve.
That's excellent. That's excellent. Gentlemen, thank you. And I think it's time for us to take some questions.
Awesome.
So please, everyone out there, if you have questions, type them into the chat, into the Q&A. As you saw, we have Megan Ellsworth, our producer, in the background, and we can be pulling some of those. So I do have some questions that have come in. And again, excuse me.
Yeah.
So how do you know? So this is saying, how do you know if this will work for my company? And so I think what this question is, and Jim, I'm going to put this to you. It's like, there's a lot of software out there. There's a lot of different programs. And I think there's a lot of cynicism too, in just how this all works. So how do they know what's right for them?
Well, yeah, and that's great. So we again, are very consultative. We're not the guys that, call us up and we're going to demo you tomorrow. That's not what we do. This is all about a good fit analysis and putting together a business case and really understanding where you're going as a company and looking at that tech stack again, that word tech stack. We're looking at that tech stack. We're looking at where you're going, and we're going to share with you how we can do that. And that might mean other products or another product that maybe isn't ours. I mean, that happens because we want to make sure if you have a plan that you want to get to a certain place and it includes other products, that's going to happen. And we need to understand that. You need to understand where you're going. It might include integrations. Integrations are great, but there's certain things you might want to integrate, some things you might not want to integrate. So those are things that I know Eugene was talking about earlier. And I think that's how you look at it. We've really got to spend time analyzing. You need a partner analyze.
And I think that is it's the relationship, right? It's the relationship that makes a difference. So we have a question that came in. I think either Jim or Eugene, I'll let you two decide who this goes to. And it says, what type of financial components is Jobba considering? Maybe we're just tired of all the bad software out there. And I won't tell you what they said, who they said, because we don't get in trouble, but it's one that probably every contractor uses. So
go ahead, Eugene.
Yeah, so I think really the difference between what makes Jobba different, in my opinion, is that we are we're really designed to work with the best financial component that our contractor picks. So we're ready to work with the application is kind of really. Sorry, I want to go too far with this, but the application is really designed to feed your accounting platform of choice. So if you have an accounting platform that you want to use, we're ready to help you get Jobba's data to work there because, as again, we were talking about standards, Jobba's built on basic accounting principle standards. So I'm not afraid of being able to say your data won't work with a certain accounting platform because as long as your platform, which I'm sure it does, is a basic accounting standards, Jobba's data is ready to speak to it. So you pick your platform, we'll help you get together with them and make everything work.
And I'm kind of also guessing you can have some, just like Jim was saying before, some advice that way, like the right fit, working through that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. We have another question that is a great one. And that first question, I believe, was from Wendy. So Wendy, thank you. The second question, I'm not sure exactly who it is, but it is, what is the duration of the training? Is it the onboarding process only or length of an executed contract?
Go
ahead, John. Yeah.
Well, so to break the training out, it was so the service coach package, which is option one, beginning, right? You get an hour onboarding and then it's 10 hours of training. So those modulars that we kind of kicked off is a full 10 hours it takes to get through the training to get you where you need to be. The second half, which is the plus, which has the other items we talked about, that is another additional approximately 10 and a half hours of training. So between the first two alone, you're getting over 20 and a half hours worth of training and the review process. So it's pretty intensive. Now I will split that out. You're not going to come in and do this in a day because it's way too much for your people to digest to do it that way, but we'll split it out into proper segments. So the important thing is you're understanding it and your team understands it when we're done. And then finally, the last one, which is the advanced package we talked about, that's about 8 hours. Now that could be done in one day. That could be something we come in and work with your entire team on and do it all in one day, but it is a full 8 hours worth of training.
I think so. We have one more question, but I'm going to, I just want to let know the person who asked it. Great question. It's about kind of how Jobba is configured. We are out of time, so I'm going to make sure we figure out who you are. If for some reason it does say anonymous attendee, so email me, Heidi@rooferscoffeeshop.com, so we can answer that question, but I think we'll have it in the back end. I think we'll have your email, so we should be good. And I want to thank everybody for being here today, especially John, Jim, and Eugene. You guys are just amazing. Thank you for all your wisdom and for being a part of this.
Thank you, Heidi. It's awesome.
Thank you.
Always awesome.
Thanks for letting me come back, Heidi. I appreciate it.
You're always welcome in the coffee shop, let me tell you.
There you go. We'll always be there.
There you
Thanks,
go.
guys.
And I would
All
like to thank everybody for being on the RLW today. We will be here again. It's probably gonna be about the 3rd week of August with Suprema on sustainability. So we will have that out soon with the actual dates. We're gonna try to move it a little bit forward so it doesn't get in your Labor Day plans. So stay tuned. Please watch this on demand. It'll be available. And if we didn't answer any questions, let us know and we'll get them answered for you. Have a great day.
Thank you.